The American work schedule has, it's fundamentally changed over the last few decades.
Yeah, it really has.
We are basically operating in a 24/7, always-on global economy.
Right. If you want a burrito at 2 in the morning, someone is making it.
Exactly. And if you have a medical emergency at 4 a.m., someone is treating you.
But the infrastructure that actually supports those workers hasn't adapted at all.
No, it hasn't. It's still largely stuck on a traditional 9 to 5 schedule.
Which leaves millions of families in a really tough spot.
It does. And today we are going to explore a specific attempt to fix that structural failure. But before we get into the details, please take a quick second right now to like and subscribe to the show.
It really helps support the discussions we bring you.
Yes, please do that. Okay, so today's focus is on S3845.
Also known as the After Hours Child Care Act.
Right. It was introduced in the 119th Congress.
Between 2025 and 2026?
And the whole mission of this discussion is to look at how this bill tries to address that massive mismatch between a 24/7 economy and a childcare system that still operates on banking hours.
I think we need to anchor this with the actual financial cost of that mismatch.
I have those numbers right here from a 2026 Ready Nation analysis.
They are pretty shocking.
They estimate that the childcare gap costs the U.S. economy $172 billion annually.
Every single year, just evaporating.
And breaking that down, 134 billion of that is lost earnings for families.
Because parents simply cannot take a shift if they have nowhere safe to put their kids.
Right. Then you have 38 billion in productivity losses for businesses.
Which comes from turnover, absenteeism, or just people having to quit when their shifts change abruptly.
And finally, 37 billion in lost tax revenue.
And which hits the government directly.
So we have a $172 billion problem. How does S3845 actually propose fixing it?
Well, the bill and its House companion, House Resolution 7498, take a specific approach.
They amend the Child Care and Development Block Grant Act of 1990, right?
Yes, the CCDBG. It establishes a brand new Child Care and Development Innovation Fund.
And the definition of who this helps is actually very precise. It targets non-traditional work hours.
Correct. The bill defines those as work hours where at least 25% of the time falls outside the normal window.
Meaning before 9 a.m. or after 5 p.m.
Or on Saturdays and Sundays.
So the people working closing shifts or overnight warehouse jobs.
Exactly. To help them, the Secretary of Health and Human Services would award competitive grants.
And I saw those grants range from $25,000 up to $500,000.
Yes. It is designed as a 5-year pilot program that is non-renewable.
And the total authorized funding for this is $10 million, right?
$10 million for the fiscal years 2027 through 2031.
Which honestly, compared to the $172 billion loss, seems pretty small.
It does, but the idea is to use that money to test very targeted eligible activities.
Like keeping existing centers open on nights and weekends.
Or building entirely new on-site childcare at workplaces like factories and hospitals.
There's also funding for safety improvements, specifically for overnight care.
Which is crucial. But there is a catch. The bill includes what you might call a skin-in-the-game clause.
The 25% non-federal match.
Right. For every federal dollar provided, the state or the employer has to put up 25 cents.
So they have to be actively invested in the solution.
Exactly. It ensures local commitment and fiscal responsibility.
Let's look at who is behind this, because the list of sponsors is remarkably bipartisan.
It really is. You have Senator Todd Young, a Republican from Indiana, alongside Senator Maggie Hassan, a Democrat from New Hampshire.
Plus co-sponsors like Senator Tillis, Senator Kaine, and Senator Hickenlooper.
It's a broad coalition, and what's interesting is that they have differing motivations, but the exact same goal.
Senator Young seems focused on the rural and productivity angle.
Yes, he represents a state with significant child care deserts. For him, it is about economic revitalization.
Because if people can't take the third shift in logistics or manufacturing, the local economy stalls.
Exactly. Meanwhile, Senator Hassan is looking at it from an affordability and middle-class angle.
Addressing the anxiety families face when they have to choose between a paycheck and keeping their kids safe.
Right. And then in the House, you have Representative Ashley Hinson, a Republican from Iowa, bringing in the essential worker perspective.
Highlighting people like nurses, police officers, and store clerks who literally keep the community running.
The pandemic really exposed how much we rely on them, and a lack of childcare is a massive barrier, particularly for women who want to enter fields like law enforcement or emergency services.
It creates this situation where non-traditional hours affect two very distinct worlds.
Yes, the two worlds concept. On one side, you have low-wage service workers in retail or food services.
People earning less than $75,000, often with highly unstable shifts.
And on the other side, you have high-wage professionals in finance or the medical field.
Earning over $100,000.
But even with that income, they still can't find a childcare center open at 8 p.m. The market simply isn't providing the supply.
Which brings up a big policy debate. Why does S3845 use the CCDBG model instead of Head Start?
That is a fundamental tension in early childhood policy. Head Start is comprehensive, federally run, and highly educational.
While the CDBG is more of a flexible market-based voucher system.
Right. S3845 leans into that flexible model because it needs to fill what we call the missing middle.
Families who earn too much to qualify for Head Start but absolutely cannot afford private overnight nannies.
Exactly. They need flexibility above all else.
But flexibility can lead to concerns about safety, which brings us to the licensing loophole.
Yes, we saw this play out in Connecticut with their debates over Senate Bill 6.
There is a constant push and pull between keeping strict safety regulations and keeping costs affordable.
Right, because if you have incredibly high licensing regulations, you ensure safety, but you might force centers to close or hike their prices.
Which leaves parents with zero options.
But the alternative is parents turning to loophole programs like some municipal camps that might not be entirely safe.
And for my reading S3845 tries to bridge that gap by funding the facility upgrades.
Exactly. Helping providers meet the high safety standards rather than lowering the standards to cut costs.
I do want to talk about some of the potential unintended consequences here. Is overnight care actually good for the children?
It is a very difficult question, and the research presents some complex answers.
For infants and toddlers, it seems pretty concerning.
It is. Research suggests there can be a potential cognitive decline or attachment issues for very young children placed in unstable, non-standard hour pair.
Because they need that consistency and routine.
Yes, but interestingly, the data flips when you look at older children.
Right, for school-age kids, say 6 to 12 years old.
Having a parent work the night shift might actually be a benefit compared to working a late evening shift.
Because if they work overnight, they're actually home during the critical after-school time and for dinner.
Exactly. So it is not a universally negative experience for the child.
There is also the risk of the custodial trap, though.
Yes. The concern that these centers become purely warehousing facilities for sleeping children.
Just keeping them safe, but completely lacking any educational environment.
And that leads directly to the provider burnout issue. We already have a workforce crisis in early care and education.
Right. The workers face high stress and low wages as it is. Adding overnight shifts seems incredibly difficult.
It is often compared to medical residency night flutes. While it is intended to help, the night shifts can lead to extreme isolation and a disintegration of competencies.
Operating a facility 24/7 just massively increases the wear and tear on both the building and the staff.
And if the grant money from this bill doesn't support significantly higher wages for that night work, no one is going to staff these centers.
So the authorized $10 million really acts as a workforce subsidy pilot program to test these solutions.
Exactly. It aims to save businesses money on recruitment and turnover by keeping parents in the workforce.
Have any states actually tried this kind of targeted approach yet?
A few have. Illinois launched an off-hours childcare program with a $2 million fund.
Did it work?
They faced significant challenges, primarily a lack of providers willing to actually participate.
Probably because of that staffing issue we just talked about.
Most likely, yes. But Michigan has seen some success with their tri-share model.
Where the cost is split 3 ways between the employer, the employee, and the state.
Right. And down in San Diego, they ran a police childcare pilot.
A targeted intervention just for law enforcement.
And it successfully reduced attrition in their ranks. S3845 is looking at these proofs of concept.
So what are the chances this federal bill actually passes?
It is currently sitting in the Senate Committee on Health, Education, Labor, and Pensions.
The strong bipartisan support from sponsors like Young and Hassan is definitely a positive sign.
It is. The main hurdles will be the broader debates over federal spending and, of course, solving that provider labor shortage.
So to bring it all together, S3845 is really a targeted attempt to update our labor infrastructure for a modern world that simply no longer sleeps.
Yes. Testing solutions through a competitive grant model and requiring state matches to ensure local buy-in.
It's a fascinating approach.
And it leaves us with a really provocative shift in philosophy. This bill implicitly moves the idea of childcare from being a strictly private family matter to a public infrastructure necessity.
Treating it more like a road or a bridge.
Exactly. If society requires people to work at 3 a.m. to keep everything running, does society then have an obligation to ensure their children are safe at 3 a.m.?
That is a crucial question. And to take it one step further, how might this change the way we view the minimum wage if overnight childcare becomes a standard utility bill for the average worker? Something to think about as this legislation moves forward. Thank you for joining us today and exploring this topic. We will see you next time.